Bill, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you as well.
Awesome. Really excited today to talk with you about labor strategy, operational consulting, BPO, and all the really cool things that you do. Before we dive into all that fun stuff, I wanted to see if you could give all the listeners like a little bit 2-minute overview maybe on what you do today, how you help customers, and kind of what role you play and how you help people.
Awesome. Well, thanks. For the last 19 years, our team has assisted organizations with optimizing their internal and outsourced contact center operations to improve the customer experience. We start with an assessment of their current state. We benchmark that against best practices, industry standards, identify deficiencies, and make recommendations to improve the customer experience.
Awesome. Oh, that's good stuff. That's really good. I always like to ask people in the very, very beginning, too, before we jump into a little bit more detail around that. What was your first job? What was your very first job that you could think back and remember that had an impact on you? And what do you carry, from that job today? Or what was some big lessons you learned from it?
Yeah, my first job out of college was with ADP, Automatic Data Processing, the leader in payroll services. And I've actually been in outsourced business services my entire career, which started with ADP. And what I've learned over the years is that organizations need to focus on what they do best and let others provide business services that they do best, like payroll, like customer interactions, like tech support, and many other outsourced services.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's an old adage, the jack of all trades is a master of none, right? So
exactly.
I know that if you're great at what you do and you know that you're great at that, then that should be what you focus on, right? Not to say you should ignore everything else, but find people who are great at what they do and let them do it.
Exactly.
It's always been my philosophy. Awesome. So you talked about a lot of things, that you do and how you help customers today. In your experience and kind of in your just consulting engagement with your customers, I know you take an approach where you focus a lot on people, on processes, on technology sometimes too, which is great. But, one of my questions is how do you differentiate when you're talking with a customer whether they might have a technology problem or whether they might have something else going on, or sometimes I'm sure there's both. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So our team's background is with BPOs, or business process outsourcers. We all got our start in that industry back in the mid-'90s. And our Epic team has assessed over 200 contact center operations. And the major challenges that we hear over and over again are centered around human capital, or people, and the contact center operation, or processes and procedures, as you mentioned. So we view technology as an enabler of delivering an ideal customer experience and needs to be in harmony with the people and processes within the contact center. A common misconception is that technology will solve all contact center challenges, and those that believe that will acquire new technology and lift and shift from old technology to new technology without giving consideration to addressing the people and process challenges prior to moving to the new technology.
Yeah, so almost, thinking about, well, if we just get this new tool, it'll fix all of our problems without kind of fixing the root cause issue. Is that a good way to think about it? Like, hey, you've got your foundation almost as your people, your processes, and just how you operate in general. And the technology can enhance that, but if you put great technology on top of, a system that's already broken, not much will change, or maybe it'll change for the worse sometimes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one of the challenges that contact centers have today is around labor strategies. So there's a lot of turnover in the industry. It's hard to hire new agents. And those that leave a company typically will in their exit interview, indicate that the tools that they had were inadequate for them to meet the quality standards that the organization was looking for. So that's an example of how technology needs to be in harmony with the human capital or people side of the contact center.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's, workforce engagement and making sure that your employees are empowered to do their job. Have you seen a lot of that change over the last, three-ish years with remote work becoming more and more popular.
Definitely, we have, and the tools that to manage a remote organization versus an internal organization have allowed that to happen. And every day it gets better and better. In addition to that, what we've always also seen is that the self-service tools are getting better and better, which means that the calls are being deflected to self-service rather than go to an agent, which makes the contact center much more efficient.
Got it. Okay. So I hear sometimes that, some customers or even, contact center, business users or people who work every day in the contact center getting nervous when, people bring up, hey, AI can help call deflection or help, avoid your customers talking to agents. In your experience, it sounds like it's mostly positive when you can, avoid some of those calls and allow customers to self-service. What are your thoughts around, or what would you say to somebody maybe who's just on the fence and doesn't want their customers talking to artificial intelligence?
Well, I think that there's always an option to, as they say, zero out to talk to an agent. And one of the measurements that the contact centers utilize is containment rate. And that's containment rate in the IVR, IVA. And they manage to that. So they can tell if the customers are working with the IVR, IVA adequately, or are they zeroing out? And they're making it better and better. And containment rates are improving every year, as you mentioned, over the last 3 to 4 years.
Oh, awesome. That's great. That's really good. And I know, people, process, technology is big, and a large part of that is, some of the work you've done and continue to do with BPOs. You and I talked at the beginning of the episode a little bit about how outsourcing we think is a solid strategy and really a necessary one in a lot of cases for specific function of the business. I do know folks that are maybe skeptical or I don't want to say anti-outsourcing, but aren't the greatest fans of it because of a lot of misconceptions that they have. In your 20 years of experience working with outsourcing, what do you think it's just some of the most common misconceptions specific to contact center about outsourcing some of your labor?
That's an excellent question. And first off, I would say that organizations will tell you that nobody can do it better than they can, since they've been doing it for a very, very long time. Actually, what the outsourced agents receive the exact same training, the same level of supervision that the internal agents receive, and are monitored for quality using the same criteria. So it's really no different if the outsourced agent was hired internally or externally. Second, I hear that we will lose control. And actually, the outsourcers work on the client's platform, as it's common today for clients to BYOP, or bring your own platforms. The BPOs that we work with, over 85% of their clients bring their own platform. And those platforms include WFM, QM, analytics, etc. So the client continues to provide forecasting, scheduling, adherence, no different than the client's internal operation. So they're not losing control at all. They're actually setting up a separate site, in essence. And then third is it will cost more to outsource than my internal operation. And that's a total misconception. Actually, our many assessments have shown that the labor expense in an internal contact center are approximately 50% of the total cost to operate an internal center. In a recent labor strategy engagement with a new client, their starting wage for agents was $19.25 per hour, and they needed 75 additional agents. On top of that, they had benefit costs of approximately 15% added to that wage. Therefore, their total cost to operate the contact center internally was over $44 per hour. Inflow recommended a BPO with extensive experience in their industry that was able to provide full service to the client, to the Inflow client, at $17.25 per hour, a savings of over 50%.
Wow, that's powerful. I think it is one of the things that people don't think about when they think about outsourcing is, hey, even if it is dollar for dollar, when you outsource, you don't have to think about benefits or the actual workspace or the tools or the technology in a lot of cases too. But I do want to back up a little bit to, I think, the second thing you started talking about, which is bring your own platform or bring your own technology. I think that's a really great thing and a really impactful way to, work really hand in hand with somebody who's an outsourced provider. In those instances, how does training typically work out? Because I know you said that you want to create that seamless experience, and that the BPOs that you work with and recommend, the great ones at least, do that. But I'm curious on if they're using the customers' platforms. I imagine they've got several customers, several different technologies. How does a training engagement or ongoing even typically work?
Yeah, the BPO typically has a training department, and what the initial training is done by the client. So the client either goes on site or does Zoom or Teams training with the agents. From that point on, it's a train-the-trainer type approach. So the BPO's training department is trained with the agents on that initial training and are able to provide ongoing training for any turnover, new ads, new agent ads, or things of that nature. So they're able to do that very effectively because these training departments are well versed in training.
Oh, awesome! So it's a trainer approach. Once you train your BPO, they're pretty much good and can rinse and repeat as many times as needed. Yeah, that's correct. Awesome. Very, very good. One of the last things that I want to talk about today is, we've talked about outsourcing, we've talked about misconceptions. If I'm a contact center that's considering, a BPO or outsourcing type of engagement, what are just some key things to look for, red flags, and how do I avoid those? Good question, and I would say that there's a few things that organizations should ensure before they contract with a BPO. One is you want to choose a contact center partner, not a vendor. A partner will take a genuine interest in the business objectives, whereas a vendor will just provide the minimum they're required to do. So you really want someone that's totally engaged in your program and in the best interests of your organization versus a vendor that's just going to do the minimum, if you will. The other would be I would suggest that you do not position your program to be a small fish in a big pond. Many outsourcers today have hundreds of thousands of seats. So if you have, let's say you want to outsource 50 agents, some of the large organizations have over 100,000 agents, and your program is going to get lost in that contact center operation or that outsourcer. So what you should look for is organizations that are, I'll call mid-tier, whereby your 50 seats are going to be a large customer for them. And in that regard, you're going to get senior management attention. Versus if you're in a very, very large contact center operation, you may get junior agents, junior supervisors, junior managers, and you don't want that because that's not in the best interest of your business objectives. The next thing I would say is select a contact center outsourcer that has expertise and experience in your industry. You want to make sure that they're not reinventing the wheel or they want you to be a guinea pig. You need to have an outsourcer that's been there, done that, right, and has experience and can validate that experience through references. The next is to ensure that the outsourcer's culture and the chemistry between the two organizations are in alignment. This is very evident when you engage them in person or via a Zoom call. We always encourage our clients to go visit the contact center when able to do so. And
that will really determine if the culture is similar and the chemistry between the senior management team and your team are in alignment. And lastly, I would say, let us assist you in identifying and selecting BPOs for your customer interaction needs. We have a lot of experience. We've been there, we've done that, and we've helped organizations outsource over the last 19 years.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's awesome, Bill. I appreciate the insight on that. I think that the culture thing is one that I wouldn't have even thought of, but it makes total sense when you think about it, right? I mean, if at their core, their personality, a business is different than yours, doesn't mean even if one's right or one's wrong, not even, bringing that into the equation, but just, differences of opinion, difference in the way they operate, I'm sure can create frustration. So I'm sure you're absolutely right. Go visit if you can, and if not, just make sure that you've gone through the quote unquote dating process and really understand how they operate and feel good about the partnership.
Yeah, and if you have an issue, you want to be able to pick up the phone and call the CEO, the president, or the owner of the contact center. You don't want to get caught in a chain of command where you reach out to a very, very large contact center operation, and they pass it down to the person that actually created the issue, and you get a call back from that person, right? So you really want that chemistry between senior management and your team so that you can feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling if there's an issue.
Awesome. Very good. All right, last thing, Bill. I'm gonna ask you to have a crystal ball, look into the future a little bit. Over the next, 3 to 5 years, what are you most excited about, or what do you think will be, the most impactful in, kind of this contact center customer experience ecosystem?
Well, I think that there's a few things. One is that there'll continue to be significant amounts of automation, but understand that live agents will never go away, because there's always going to be some people that want to talk to a real person, not talk to a machine. So even though we talked earlier about call deflection, it's going to be how easy is it in an IVR or IVA as opposed to zeroing out and getting an agent, which is very easy. So it's going to be degrees of effort, if you will. Did I get my question answered within the IVR, IVA, or did I have to zero out and talk with someone? So I think that's going to continue. I think that outsourcing will continue as well. I think, as I alluded to earlier, there's always organizations that can do things better than you can. If you're a manufacturer, why are you not outsourcing your customer interactions? Focus on manufacturing. Don't focus on something that you have no expertise in doing. And typically, the contact center is still a cost center. It's an organization that needs to be budgeted for every year, and we see over and over again that the budgets are flat while the customer interactions are increasing, which also drives the interest in the self-service and automation. So I think it's going to continue to grow. I think the tools are going to continue to get better, and I think the customer experience will improve over the next few years. Awesome.
Well, yeah, I know I'm excited to be a part of it. It's definitely going to be fun to see how it develops, and it's changing, more and more every day. Thanks for your time today, Bill. I really appreciate it. I think this was a really, really great conversation, and really educational, especially on the BPO and labor strategy sort of talk track there.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.